In the continent of seven dragons, within the magnificent palace of Shungong, a loud scream echoed from the depths of the fortress. The voice bellowed curses at Yin Qingxin, raging about being imprisoned for over 100 years. Inside the palace chambers, a gorgeous woman sat positioned above an unknown man. She observed him with cold calculation, remarking that it was a pity someone as worthless as him possessed a Hundong soul. She identified herself as the first goddess of the cultivation realms and the empress of Shungong, explaining that the man had served as her slave for a century. The empress told her captive that if he had surrendered his soul to her from the beginning, she would not have wasted her time on someone so worthless. She tortured him through the chains bound around his neck, tightening them as she spoke. The man was Jian Han, the main character of this tale, and she was the culprit who had divided his soul, causing him to end up trapped in this world. The empress moved closer to Jian Han, stating that if they continued their sessions, he would eventually learn to obey her completely. However, she decided this approach was insufficient and declared they should try again. Upon hearing this, Jian Han felt shock course through him, realizing that if they engaged in another round, he might not survive. He knew he had to find a way to escape. The empress positioned herself above him once more, explaining that with his assistance today, she would reach a new level of cultivation. She promised that afterward, she would release him. Jian Han recognized this as a lie, knowing she had no intention of ever letting him go. He understood that she planned to devour his soul completely that very day. The empress smiled down at him and asked how he felt about the arrangement. In a shocking move, Jian Han suddenly rose up and kissed her, their lips touching unexpectedly. With a smirk, he looked at her flawless features and made a proposition. If she removed his shackles, he would gladly agree to give his soul to her so she could break through to her new cultivation level. Anger flashed across the empress's face as she commanded him to shut up. She gripped his neck tightly, calling him a petty bastard and demanding to know how he dared speak to the empress in such a manner. Jian Han called out her name and asked if she truly wanted to take his soul. He pointed out that he had resisted for over 100 years, and now that he had decided to offer it willingly, she was refusing. The empress released her grip on him as a realization dawned. She understood that if she forcibly took his soul, the chances of it obeying her would be minimal. However, if he gave it voluntarily, she could cultivate without problems. This willing surrender would allow her to discover 3 of the 7 secrets of souls and gain 3 additional lives. After weighing her options, the empress decided to release him. She removed the shackles from his body, but warned him sternly that if he attempted to touch her or run away, he would be killed immediately. The chains broke and fell to the ground. Jian Han looked at the empress while placing his hands around his neck, massaging where the shackles had been. When she became distracted, he saw this as his only opportunity for escape. His hands began to glow with accumulated power. Using this energy, he struck her back with tremendous force. The shock sent Jian Han flying backwards, his body slamming against the wall. With fury blazing in her eyes, the empress accused him of daring to cultivate in secret during his captivity. Jian Han explained that during his 100 years as a slave, he had initially wanted to escape, but everything had seemed manageable at first. However, he pointed out that after a century, anyone would want to run away from her. He revealed that he had been gathering his strength for this very moment. Upon hearing this confession, the empress activated her powers. Jian Han immediately turned to flee, but she looked at him hungrily and declared that since he wanted to kill her, not even a stain would remain of him when she finished with him. Still running, Jian Han glanced back to see how terrifying she appeared in her rage. The empress immediately seized his shoulder, telling him not to even dream about escaping. She sent a shock directly to his soul, causing him excruciating pain. Realizing this was his last chance at freedom, Jian Han made a desperate decision and slashed his own soul. Just as the empress was about to deliver the killing blow, this created a brief moment of opportunity. He used this precious time to leap through a portal that had appeared. Holding his wounded and slashed soul, Jian Han knelt on the ground in the new realm. Suddenly, the empress heard his voice echo through the portal. He declared that when he returned, he would reclaim his soul and torture her for 1,000 years in revenge. Upon hearing his threat, the empress swore that she would find him even if he fled to the very edge of the earth. In the Tianru continent, within a dense forest, Jian Han opened his eyes. Looking at his hands, he realized he had succeeded in his escape and was now inhabiting a new body. Getting to his feet, he shouted with joy, celebrating that he had finally escaped from the empress. He vowed that he would eventually return to destroy the Shungong palace completely. Suddenly, Jianhan heard a surprising voice asking if he was still alive. Looking back, he saw a girl who was wondering aloud why he had not died after taking a deadly poison. At that moment, the past memories of this body flooded back to him. The original Jianhan had been madly in love with Lin Hu, but she had rejected him completely. Strangely, about a month ago, she had suddenly begun showing him attention and affection. After gaining his trust, she had manipulated him into stealing medical prescriptions for her. Later, she had poisoned him immediately after he received the poison, causing him to die a pitiful death because of his misplaced love. Jianhan thought to himself what an unfortunate body he had entered. The girl, seeing that he was not dead as expected, declared that since the poison had failed to kill him, she would finish the job herself. Lin Hu explained that no one should know about what had transpired, as it would destroy her reputation completely. She told him that if he truly loved her, he should allow her to kill him to protect her standing in society. Jianhan responded that she had no shame at all, willing to kill him simply to preserve her reputation. He thought to himself how such a beautiful girl could possess such a rotten soul. At that moment, someone else walked into the scene. The newcomer told Lin Hu that he had advised her to kill Jianhan immediately. The man folded his arms across his chest and remarked that she was being too kind. He suggested they should simply tell everyone the truth, that she had become his wife, and that would be the last thing Jianhan would ever hear. The two prepared to kill him, but when they moved to strike, they discovered that Jianhan had been replaced with a piece of wood, which surprised them greatly. Meanwhile, Jianhan was running desperately through the forest, breathing heavily. He stopped near a tree to catch his breath, thanking the heavens that he had managed to escape while his would-be killers were distracted by their conversation. However, he realized that this body was too weak, and his pursuers would reach him soon. Looking back, he saw the two running toward him. The man called out, labeling him useless trash and declaring that he should not even dream of escaping. As Jianhan continued fleeing, he suddenly noticed someone riding a horse at full speed directly toward him. Looking forward at the approaching horse, he thought he was about to die from the collision. However, the lady on horseback managed to stop her mount just in time. The sudden halt caused Jianhan to fall to the ground from shock and exhaustion. The lady asked him what he was doing and whether he had a death wish. Jianhan looked up in surprise to see a gorgeous lady with silver hair and striking blue eyes. When his two pursuers finally reached the scene, they were shocked to see her. They called out her name in recognition, Yang Rueishue. Yang Rueishue looked at the two arrivals and asked them what they were doing, reminding them that fights were not permitted in this territory. The man quickly explained that Jianhan was a criminal who had attacked them, and they had chased him to arrest him for stealing medical recipes. Jianhan thought to himself that the rumors about Yang Rueishue strictly following the city's orders seemed to be true. When Yang Rueishue questioned the theft allegation, the man proceeded to confirm what he had stated. As Jianhan listened, he realized that these deceitful people were behind everything that had happened to him. Yang Rueishue looked at him directly and asked if he was the infamous Jianhan, mentioning that his family had already sent an army after him. This revelation shocked Jianhan completely. The man drew his sword and told Jianhan to take responsibility for his crimes. Jianhan shouted that they were liars who had deceived him, declaring that it was the two of them who had made him steal the recipes just to use him for their own purposes. With tears filling his eyes, Jianhan said he had sacrificed everything for love, but she had cheated on him. He demanded to know why they had done this to him. Both Yang Rueishue and the two accusers looked on but could not say anything in response. Jianhan continued his defense, explaining that they had wanted to eliminate all witnesses and had tried to kill him after he received the stolen recipes. The man attacked Jianhan, attempting to silence him and prevent him from framing them further. Jianhan called out to Yang Rueishue, insisting that his accusers were lying and had no respect for the laws. She immediately stopped the man in his tracks, placing her fingers on his blade. Yang Rueishue declared that she would personally bring Jianhan to the Jian family, and they would deal with the matter themselves. The blade stopped just inches from Jianhan's head. In fear, he thought that if it had come just a bit closer, he would have died. He realized the attackers had no brains, trying to kill him in front of Miss Yang. The man told Yang Rueishue that he had heard His Majesty wish for her and his senior brother to marry. He mentioned that when that happened, he would become the prince's assistant and serve in the palace, hoping Miss Yang would not interfere with their current business. From behind, Jianhan shouted, asking what the hell the man was saying. He declared that the lovely Miss Yang would never become that bastard's wife, and that His Highness would not allow it. He added that the Zhang family had no place in the royal palace. Yang Ruixue released her grip on Zhang's sword. Zhang called out to Lin Huyu, suggesting they should join hands to kill Jian Han. At that moment, Yang Ruixue released her sword aura and cultivation energy, which surprised Lin Huyu greatly. Lin Huyu wondered in amazement if Yang Ruixue had reached the 3rd level of cultivation. In despair, she thought about how they were the same age, yet questioned how Yang Ruixue could be so incredibly strong. Jian Han made a ridiculous face and told his accusers to come closer and attack him if they dared. This gesture made Lin Huyu furious, but she was stopped by Zhang before she could react. Zhang asked why Miss Yang was protecting Jian Han, pointing out that his family worked for the government. This question made Yang Ruixue even more angry, and she told the two to get out of the area immediately. Her command silenced everyone in their tracks. Zhang raised his sword and told Jian Han that they would leave for now, but warned that he could run after Miss Yang like a cur if he wanted. He addressed Yang Ruixue directly, saying he was sorry if he had offended her, but reminded her that they would soon be relatives and he would personally take care of the Jian Han matter. Zhang thought to himself that soon his father, and he would personally arrest Jian Han. He told Lin Huyu they should be going. As she looked back at Jian Han with his abusive expression, he called out to them, saying goodbye in a mocking manner. However, a sword was suddenly placed at Jian Han's neck. It was Yang Ruixue who informed him that he would now be following her to the Jian house, and if he had been framed as he claimed, she would help him prove his innocence. Jian Han thought to himself that even if the Jian family discovered the truth, he would still be severely punished for his involvement. As he tried to push her sword away, he asked her to wait, claiming he had an idea. Jian Han declared that he knew what needed to be done so that she would not have to get married to Zhang's senior brother. With a serious expression on her face, Yang Ruixue told him to explain his idea. At the city lord's household, someone slammed their fist on the table with a resounding crash. A huge man shouted, asking what Yang Ruixue wanted by recruiting such a person. He expressed his strong disagreement, stating that the child not only had no talent for cultivation but was also notorious, making him completely unworthy of her. The woman, who happened to be Yang Ruixue's mother, tried to reason with her daughter. She explained that marriage was a significant event in her life and advised her not to grieve herself over momentary decisions. Jian Han stood outside, listening to their conversation and smiling at the fact that Yang Ruixue had unexpectedly come to see her parents so soon. Yang Ruixue called out to her parents, informing them that the country's government had sent troops to arrange marriages and would arrive at Piaoxue City in 3 days. She explained that in the current political situation, only a son-in-law could refuse the marriage arrangement. If they refused directly, they would need to provide the king with a valid reason, but everything would be too late because of the approaching troops. With anger building in his voice, her father shouted, demanding to know who this useless waste of a person was, referring to someone who could be heard listening nearby. Yang Ruixue remembered Jian Han's proposal that they get married, which she had initially refused. He had asked her why she rejected him, wondering if it was because of his appearance or perhaps his bad reputation. Looking at him seriously, Yang Ruixue had said that while it was indeed a good idea to hire a son-in-law, there were many people like him on Piaoxue City streets, so why should she choose him specifically? Jian Han replied that it had to be him. Sitting on the floor, he explained that as such a foolish and worthless person in her city's main palace, what would the world think of this arrangement? Yang Ruixue looked at him with growing seriousness as Jian Han continued his argument. He pointed out how the royal family could reduce their noble status by openly sending troops to seize a woman. He predicted that this action would spread gossip not only among the royal aristocracy but would even make 3-year-old children laugh until their teeth fell out. Even so, Yang Ruixue countered that Snowdrift City would become the focus of the world's attention afterward, and the royal family would definitely not spare the Yang family in the future. With a serious expression, Jian Han told her that the best way to eliminate fear was to face it directly. Yang Ruixue thought his words sounded surprisingly manly. He assured her to rest peacefully, explaining that as long as the royal family could not send troops directly, he had his own methods to handle the situation. Yang Ruixue looked up, contemplating whether getting rid of this marriage really had only one solution. The matter of the Royal Highness arranging marriages had already spread throughout the region. She wondered who would take the risk of offending the prince to become a son-in-law in such circumstances. She closed her eyes to confirm her decision, realizing the gravity of the choice before her. Opening her eyes in the present moment, Yang Rueishue declared that she would not go backwards with her choice. Her father told her that she was as stubborn as always, adding that he could not bear the thought of her marrying that waste Jianhan. However, he was interrupted by Yang Rueishue, who stated that Jianhan posed no hindrance to their plans. She explained that the government was ambitious, and if she married the prince, this city would be used as a military base for operations in the north and south. Thinking to herself, she reasoned that as long as she could save her family and keep this city as her personal domain, she could sacrifice anything, even her body. Jianhan, still listening from outside, wondered if his thoughts were correct. He had found himself a beautiful wife, but he had not expected the situation to unfold this way. Yang Rueishue's father placed his hands on his head, contemplating that having this son-in-law would indeed keep the family safe for a while. Even if the young family would later become targets of the Royal Highness's attention, as long as the prince had no excuse to send soldiers directly, he could not do anything to them. After all, their city's defenses could not be easily destroyed. However, he looked at Jianhan with an angry expression. Jianhan stepped inside and greeted his future father-in-law, telling him to rest assured that his junior would take care of everything. He promised that whoever dared to anger Yang Rueishue, he would deal with them and slaughter their entire family. He warned that if his daughter suffered even the slightest wrong because of him, the father should not blame him for being rude in response. After a while, the city lord went outside where he was greeted by several people calling him by his title. He shouted to them, announcing that tomorrow would be his daughter's wedding. He emphasized that even though it was rushed, it could not be conducted hastily or without proper ceremony. They all answered in unison with their agreement and understanding. Later, Jianhan took 6 pieces of third-grade pills to strengthen his body. He absorbed them quickly under the influence of the Xianhuangzhuahua technique. As he opened his eyes, he realized that with his ancient chaotic soul and the 3 souls and 7 spirits he possessed, he could practice the 3 primordial spirits and the 7 soul secrets. The 3 primitive gods technique meant that he could focus on 3 different tasks with one heart, allowing for much faster training speed. Light began to glow around his head as the water in the pool splashed outward. He clenched his fists, delighted that his previous cultivation at the 2nd grade of gathering energy was far too low. Even now, reaching only the 6th grade of gathering atmosphere felt somewhat slow, though it was remarkable for a small town's main house to have such abundant hot springs. A lady brought clothes and told him to get dressed quickly, also wondering aloud why the water had become so dirty. Jianhan asked her if she had brought the clothes. She was a maid called Xianger, who informed him that he had taken too much time in the lady's dedicated pond since his arrival. She mentioned that he had been bathing all night and needed to hurry because the grand wedding ceremony was approaching. Jianhan smirked and told her she would have to give him time to prepare properly. Xianger continued, explaining that despite the hasty wedding ceremony, people with high backgrounds would be coming to offer congratulations, and the event could not be delayed. She suspected it was more than just congratulations they would be offering. Dressed up like a charming prince, Jianhan said he was curious to see what extent this good show could achieve. Later, as Jianhan walked through the estate, he reflected that right now, in addition to self-protection, the most important thing was to improve his strength as quickly as possible before Yin Qingcheng could find him. The Tianwu continent was a lower continent, and the spiritual energy concentration here was much weaker than other realms. The martial arts realms were divided into 7 levels: Gather Aura, Tongmai, Little Grandmaster, Grandmaster, Wuho, Saint, and Extreme. Each level was further divided into 9 grades, and only by breaking through the martial arts peak could one enter the innate realm and begin to practice the Chongqing Avenue. Yin Qingcheng had already stood at the top of the Chongqing Avenue. Placing his hands on his head, Jianhan acknowledged that the gap between them was enormous. However, he smiled, thinking that originally this foolish body had offended his family, but now he could only rely on the main palace for protection and growth. The next day, a grand banquet was held. As people drank, ate, and danced, someone asked why the wedding was so sudden. A group of guests wondered who the son-in-law was, since there had been no news about him at all. At the front entrance, 2 people were being welcomed. The host introduced them as Brother Lin and the beauty of the Lin family, Lin Jiaqian. As the 2 greeted everyone back, the gathered guests recognized the wicked girl and the wicked boy Zhang Guoshu. who declared that to be able to marry Jiaqian was indeed a god's blessing. He added that while some people might want to eat swan meat, they could not be allowed to toy with Jiaqian. As they all moved to find empty seats, someone mentioned that the Jian family was probably afraid to come today because of Jian Han's disgrace. They noted that yesterday, the whole city had been treated to a joke, questioning whether the family still had the face to participate in today's happy event. Sitting in their seats, the wicked girl said she did not know who the groom was. One guest suggested it was impossible for the prince to still be on the road, and it was even more impossible for him to get into trouble. Another man angrily suggested that the city lord was probably trying to escape the marriage arrangement. Someone asked if it would be Zhao, and Zhang said it was possible, mentioning that he had long heard that Zhao and Yang Ruixue were best friends. He explained that the prince had also favored Zhao before, but for Yang Ruixue's willingness to stay in Piaxue City, Zhao would have been made a small troop leader. The purple-headed man commented that Zhao En's approach was both fierce and ruthless, with the support of the Zhao family behind him. He predicted that Zhao would be a formidable rival in the future. Another guest agreed about his ruthless character but warned that he had the ambition of a wolf child, fearing that the Yang family might be inviting a wolf into the city. At that moment, a loud noise could be heard from outside as people were sent flying. A loud voice declared that he wanted to see Yang Ruixue. Everyone looked with surprised expressions as they realized it was Zhao, demanding to see her and shouting that he wanted to see who was more suitable than him. This shocked all the guests, who wondered that if Zhao was here, then who was the actual groom? All the people who approached him were knocked out of the way as he pushed through the crowd. Suddenly, he heard a familiar voice telling him to stop. It was Yang Ruixue's parents who had appeared to confront him. Yang Ruixue's parents asked what he had done to their soldiers. Zhao bowed respectfully, greeting them and asking why he did not understand why Ruixue was suddenly getting married. This question made the two pause for a moment before they told him that their daughter had met her lover. They explained that this was her decision, and he and she were not fated for each other. Not fated? He said angrily. That is why I was willing to become a troop leader. Don't you know that in this snow city, except for me, Zhao, who is a match for Ruixue? I don't believe it. I want her to tell me personally who her lover is. The guards ran to surround him as he declared that if uncle and aunt insisted on blocking him, he could only break through their defenses. Suddenly, Yang Ruixue appeared, calling out to him and telling him to go back. She announced that she already had someone in her heart. Zhao fell silent for a moment before saying it was impossible. He argued that she had stayed with him all the time, questioning how she could like someone else and accusing her of lying to him. If you want to get married, you will get married to me, right? He demanded. Yang Ruixue told him she had not lied to him. She explained that today was a day of great joy, and if her cousin was here today, she would be grateful. However, if her cousin was not here to send her blessings, then she could only ask him to go back. Zhao shouted with anger, calling Yang Ruixue his woman and declaring that he would have her today. This made her angry, and she called him presumptuous. Yang Ruixue ordered the guards to escort him back to the barracks. As the guards prepared to attack with their swords raised, Zhao raised one hand up and asked who dared to move against him. He stated that he had stayed in the Yang family because of her, and now that she was marrying someone else, she should not think he would still listen to her orders. This outburst made her father angry. Zhao continued, saying that the Zhao family was powerful, and today he was going to see the man who dared to steal his woman from him. He challenged the mystery groom to come out and fight him. The surrounding people started discussing among themselves. Some suggested that the Yang family was putting on a fake ceremony, while others wondered if there really was a groom, commenting that it would be too foolish for him not to come out at this point. Suddenly, a loud voice could be heard asking who was yelling there, pointing out that today was his happy day. Looking back, they all saw Jian Han approaching. He smirked and asked what he should do if this commotion affected his plans for the night. In the hall where everyone had gathered, including Yang Ruixue and Jian Han, one of the people wondered how the groom could possibly be better than Zhao. Zhao asked why a waste like Jian Han was putting on wedding attire. Yang Ruixue's father asked Jian Han why he was coming out and told him he should go back inside. Others wondered if it was truly him who was the groom. Yang Ruixue told Jian Han he should please go back and not unnecessarily cause trouble at the ceremony. Jian Han told her that she should figure it out, but questioned why this dog was barking so loudly. Stepping forward, he told Zhao to remember that he did not care which family he came from. He declared that in an hour he would become the son-in-law of the city lord, and when they met at the city gate, Zhaoan should not forget to count out his new master. Are you worthy? Zhaoan said, breaking the ground with his foot. He told Jian Han to get out of the Yang mansion, or he would personally send him off. Moving his body ready for a fight, he prepared to attack. Jian Han noticed the murderous aura emanating from Zhaoan. The city lord and his wife were in panic as the lord said that this waste had just come out to embarrass the Yang family. As Zhaoan attacked, Yang Rueishue immediately stopped him, telling him to halt. She declared that from today onward, Jian Han would be her husband. She stated that if he lived, she lived, and if he died, she died. If Zhaoan wanted to touch Jian Han, he would have to get past her first. This surprised Zhaoan, who asked why she would draw her sword for such a person. He insisted that Jian Han must be killed today. This act also surprised Jian Han, who looked on in disbelief. Jian Han walked in front of Yang Rueishue, telling her to let him handle the situation. You can't, she said, but he told her to just trust him. With a smile on his face, Jian Han thought to himself that since she could do this for him, he would protect her for the rest of his life and never let her suffer any harm. Looking at Zhaoan, Jian Han told him that since he liked Yang Rueishue so much, he dared to make 3 bets with him. Zhaoan asked what they would bet on. With seriousness, Jian Han said they would bet money, manhood, and life. Manhood, Zhaoan replied. Jian Han smirked, saying that if he lost, Zhaoan could not do anything to him. Zhaoan smiled and said they should start immediately. In the first round, I bet 10,000 gold. Do you have any? Zhaoan challenged. Jian Han smiled, saying it cost a lot of money to marry the city lord's daughter. The city head shouted that he had no money, questioning what Jian Han was spending his money on. However, Jian Han calmly replied that he happened to possess 7 third-class yuan dan, each worth more than 10,000 gold. He declared that he would bet these precious items instead. Jian Han then turned to Brother Zhao, remarking that his money seemed insufficient for such a wager. This statement shocked everyone present, as they wondered how he could possess such valuable treasures. The city lord was equally stunned, recognizing that all 7 yuan dan were precious medicines from his own mansion. He immediately shouted at Jian Han not to gamble with such valuable items. Zhaoan was also surprised by this revelation. He understood that with these yuan dan, one could leap into the Tongmai realm, but their combined value of 70,000 gold represented the entire annual tax revenue of Piaoxue City. He advised Jian Han to forget about the bet, suggesting it wasn't worth the risk. However, Jian Han announced that anyone who wanted to participate could join the betting. The onlookers couldn't believe such an opportunity existed, with many commenting that Jian Han was foolish and they shouldn't let this chance go to waste. The city lord stood up, intending to place his own bet, but his wife immediately stopped him. She scolded him, asking whether he truly wanted his son-in-law to win or lose, calling his behavior shameless. The city lord privately thought to himself that this son-in-law was not as valuable as the yuan dan. The betting began in earnest. The Zhang family placed 20,000 gold on Zhaoan to win, while the Lin family also bet 20,000 gold on Zhao's victory. Both families smiled with evil intentions, confident they would emerge victorious. Jian Han smiled and asked if there were others who wished to place bets. The Piaoxue Hall contributed 10,000 gold to the pot. However, Jian Han declared that the amount was still insufficient and requested another 10,000 gold from any willing participants. A wicked-looking man raised his hand, announcing that the Zhang family would add another 10,000 gold. This shocked his companion, who shouted that the 30,000 gold represented all their family's reserves. The man dismissed his concerns, asking how skilled Jian Han could possibly be and expressing confidence that he wouldn't win. Jian Han asked for clarification about whether their bets were final. After some deliberation, the Zhang family confirmed their 30,000 gold wager. This made Jian Han smile with satisfaction, thinking he had finally caught a big fish. Looking toward the city lord, Jian Han asked if he would serve as witness to the proceedings. The city lord agreed but urged them to begin quickly, saying he didn't want to look at Jian Han's face any longer. He was troubled by the thought that the 7 yuan dan would simply disappear. As Jian Han walked forward to where Zhaoan and the guards were waiting, he waved his hand dismissively at them. Zhaoan looked back with a grin on his face and declared that in this round, anyone who could break Jian Han's formation would be rewarded. On the battlefield, both teams gathered on opposite sides. Zhaoan's forces appeared as energetic as ever, while Jian Han's soldiers looked visibly weak and dispirited. One observer commented that Lord Zhaoan's army had never suffered defeat. Ruyu asked her father what had happened to Jian Han's soldiers. Her father looked away uncomfortably and explained that he had ordered any soldiers willing to join Jian Han. But because Jian Han was considered a waste and a disgrace, this was the unfortunate result. Ryu looked concerned as she gazed at Jian Han with worry. Beside them, members of the Lin and Zhang families were engaged in conversation. One person spoke to Zhang, asking if he was waiting for his third-grade Yuan Dan, noting that with those treasures, the Zhang family's strength might exceed that of the main palace. Zhang replied that the Lin family was also formidable, possessing 2 third-grade Yuan Dan. He added ominously that the marriage alliance between their families meant the Yin family's patience had been exhausted this time. Hearing this exchange, the city lord became furious. He shouted at Jian Han, telling him he shouldn't allow the Yuan Dan to be given to the enemy and that he shouldn't be so eager to face defeat. Jian Han thought to himself that his father-in-law's enthusiasm was rather overwhelming, but he remained calm, telling himself to wait for the right moment. The city lord raised his hands and announced the start of the competition. Zhaoan quickly alerted his soldiers to attack, and they swiftly arranged themselves in an unusual formation. The audience immediately noticed this with shock and surprise, calling it the snake formation. Spectators exclaimed that this array was extremely fierce, designed for swift killing attacks that could eliminate opponents in a short period while maintaining perfect defense. The young Zhang heir called out to his father, telling him not to worry. He boasted that if Jian Han could win, he would call him grandfather. The man beside him looked puzzled, asking if Zhang wasn't already his son, to which Zhang replied that such a thing was impossible. He told them to wait and see the waste cry in defeat. Jian Han stood calmly at the back of his soldiers with a smile on his face. He called out to his shield bearers, and they all responded in unison. They formed a protective formation surrounding Jian Han, which caused Zhang to laugh dismissively. He declared that Jian Han had already lost, explaining that the snake array was a very famous formation and questioning what Jian Han thought he was doing. However, Zhang admitted that Jian Han was performing better than expected, though he still considered it futile resistance. The city lord closed his eyes in resignation, saying they should forget about continuing to watch, as there was no need for them to keep waiting for the inevitable outcome. Ryu suddenly spoke up, contradicting the general assumption. Zhaoan smirked and declared that they would see how long Jian Han could hold on. He ordered his soldiers to break the formation immediately. As Zhao's troops struck with their spears, Jian Han's forces successfully blocked the attack. This frustrated Zhaoan, who wondered how such a thing could be possible. Ryu quickly stood up in surprise, suddenly remembering that the formation Jian Han's troops were using was the 10-strike method, a legendary technique that had been lost for a long time. The arrangement of Jian Han and his troops resembled that of a giant iron tortoise, providing seemingly impenetrable defense. Both the Lin and Zhang families were shocked by this revelation. They whispered among themselves that Jian Han apparently had some hidden cards up his sleeve. Jian Han smiled confidently at their reaction, while the young Zhang heir told his father with growing fear that he could rest assured. He insisted it was not actually the 10-strike method and that Jian Han's formation was about to be broken. Growing desperate, Zhaoan ordered his troops to attack again, shouting that the enemy formation couldn't hold up much longer. As his soldiers rushed forward once more to assault Jian Han's troops, Zhaoan studied the defensive formation, believing he had spotted a flaw. He smiled with satisfaction at his discovery. However, Jian Han also smiled and calmly instructed his team to change formation. Zhao's advancing troops suddenly cried out that something was wrong. They realized they were being struck from an unexpected angle. This surprised all the spectators, who wondered what this new lineup could be. Some observers speculated whether Jian Han was also planning to use the snake array, but others disagreed, trying to remember what formation this could possibly be. It was Ryu who remembered the formation's true identity, the Royal Dragon Array. This revelation shocked everyone present, as they realized this was also one of the legendary 10-strike methods, renowned for its devastating offensive capabilities. Jian Han's troops had completely surrounded Zhaoan's forces, with spears pointed directly at Zhaoan himself. Sweat poured down his face as he found himself trapped. Jian Han smiled at his opponent and casually remarked that what Zhaoan had used was merely the second-grade insect array created by Zhao Tong. He reflected privately that following Yin Qiqing to read the entire Luotian Palace collection had not been in vain after all. The city lord, along with the Lin and Zhang families, were stunned by the sudden turn of events. In the first game, Jian Han had achieved complete victory. The Lin and Zhang families immediately began regretting their 20,000 gold coin bets, realizing they had lost an entire year's worth of credit for purchasing immortality pills. Jian Han, holding a bag of coins, called out to the Zhang family to thank them for their generous 30,000 gold contribution, noting that today's gift had indeed been extraordinary. The young Zhang heir protested frantically that Jian Han must be cheating, claiming such a victory was impossible. However, his father slapped him across the face, asking if he had no shame. He pointed out that if not for his son's arrogance, they wouldn't have lost an additional 10,000 gold. Looking toward the city lord with anger barely contained behind his smile, the Zhang family patriarch announced that they were willing to accept their gambling loss of 30,000 gold coins. He added diplomatically that they were also prepared to accept such a capable son-in-law into their circle. The city lord wondered why the Zhang family patriarch was smiling in such a peculiar manner despite their loss. Meanwhile, Jian Han smiled as he examined his rewards, while Zhaoan at the back berated one of his troops, calling them useless. Zhaoan clenched his fists and called out for the next game, declaring that he wanted to cut off Jian Han's head. Holding the gold coins and other treasures, Jian Han announced that although the marriage was being arranged hastily, the city lord should consider accepting these 70,000 gold coins, 7 pills, and 10 martial arts books as gifts for the children. The city lord accepted them with great happiness, exclaiming that they were wonderful gifts. He wondered aloud if these were truly the long-lost strategic martial arts books. Ryu looked at Jian Han thoughtfully, noticing that the books appeared remarkably new and wondering if they had been recently written. Jian Han raised his cup toward her in a toast, and she smiled happily back at him. Further back, the Zhang family patriarch dragged his son's head down, muttering that this young man possessed deep knowledge. He was now afraid that Jian Han had expected Zhaoan to compete with him from the very beginning and had prepared accordingly. Meanwhile, the Lin family beauty also reflected that she hadn't expected Jian Han to hide such considerable strength, realizing she had truly underestimated him. Zhaoan approached Jian Han, reminding him that there were still 2 more games remaining, suggesting they were better than nothing. Jian Han smirked and told him not to be so hasty, saying he had something to discuss with his mother-in-law first. Smiling at his mother-in-law, Jian Han pointed out that Zhaoan was her nephew, questioning whether they really needed to continue with the remaining 2 games. He expressed concern that if they continued, he was afraid her nephew might not be able to leave the battlefield alive that day. This statement made the surrounding crowd wonder if Zhaoan would actually be able to win, with many commenting that Jian Han seemed overly confident. This display of confidence only made Zhaoan more furious. The woman told Jian Han that he could fight and make his own decisions without worrying about her feelings. She encouraged him to go ahead and win, leaving her husband completely speechless at her response. Jian Han thought to himself that he was still concerned about dealing with Zhaoan, but it seemed the 2 families were not as united as they appeared. Holding a majestic bow, Zhaoan called for everyone to stop talking and showed off his weapon. He told Jian Han that he would enjoy his next present. The people immediately recognized it as the legendary Tin Stone Bow, remarking that such a general's weapon was not easily mastered. The bow required 300 kilograms of arm strength to draw properly. Zhang commented from the side that this time, Jian Han was finished. He pointed out that Jian Han's second-grade strength couldn't possibly pull such a bow, adding that Zhaoan's archery skills had always been famous throughout Snow City and could never be compared to Jian Han's abilities. Ryu, hearing their conversation from behind, wondered how Jian Han could make such a gamble under these circumstances. Zhaoan looked back at Jian Han, expecting to see worry or fear, but instead found him casually eating an apple with complete disregard for the situation. Zhaoan ordered his soldiers to bring a stone plate target. 2 guards struggled to carry the heavy stone, eventually throwing it high into the air. Zhaoan positioned his bow and arrow, and the crowd was amazed by his impressive arm strength as he fired his arrow skyward. The projectile flew straight toward the stone plate, piercing through it completely and shattering it into pieces. The spectators called out that it was an incredible 300-foot shot at a medium difficulty level. Zhaoan smiled at Jian Han and asked what he thought of that display. The people praised it as an exceptional moving target shot, noting how rare it was for such a thick stone plate to be destroyed with a single arrow. With a hilarious expression, Zhaoan asked Jian Han if he dared claim to be an expert in archery, telling him mockingly that he shot like a pregnant person. This comment shocked the city lord and the rest of the audience, while even the beautiful Ryu tried to hold back her laughter. Zhaoan threw the bow toward Jian Han, declaring that without further delay, if he couldn't pull it off, he would let him die miserably. Jian Han caught the bow with both hands, making the people wonder if he would be all right. One observer laughed, warning him not to get hurt just from trying to pull the bowstring. However, Jian Han held the bow comfortably and began examining it with interest. He noted that the bow's features included a horn-blood rhinoceros body and horn-blood rhino tendon for the bowstring. With a smirk, Zhaoan told him not to just look at it, daring him to try pulling it if he wasn't afraid of breaking his bones. Zhang added from the back that he was afraid Jian Han would break his teeth instead. Jian Han acknowledged their concerns, saying he really didn't dare to pull this bow, but he was afraid he might break it and end up having to pay for it. Zhaoan laughed at this response, calling it a joke. He declared that if Jian Han could damage the bow, he would not only pay for it but would kneel in apology. Furthermore, if Jian Han could successfully pull the bowstring, Zhaoan promised he would kneel and call him grandfather. Upon hearing this challenge, Jian Han casually positioned the bow and prepared to knock an arrow. However, as he did so, the bowstring suddenly snapped, causing the entire bow to break apart in his hands. Looking at the shocked Zhaoan, Jian Han told them both to kneel as promised. He then looked at Ruyu, calling her his wife and telling her that they had gained 2 grandchildren before they were even married, asking if she was happy with this development. She replied that she didn't want grandchildren yet. Both Zhang and Zhaoan accused Jian Han of cheating. Zhaoan insisted there must be some trick involved, questioning how Jian Han could have possibly obtained the strength to break his 10-stone bow. Jian Han smiled and said he had known for a long time that they wouldn't accept the result easily, so their grandfather would open their eyes by showing his 2 grandchildren something even more impressive. He called for someone to bring him a 15-stone bow, which made some people repeat his words in disbelief, wondering if he was completely insane. They pointed out that it weighed over 595 pounds and questioned how anyone could pull such a second-class gathering bow. The city lord, watching 4 men struggle to carry the massive bow, explained that it was made of hard Tianlong stone, with a bowstring crafted from the Jasper Snake King's snake tendon. He noted that this treasure of the city's main palace hadn't been used for many years. Lin Jiaqian's father asked his daughter if Jian Han knew how to use such a bow. She replied that she had never heard of him having any archery skills, and even if he could shoot, she doubted he could pull the 15-stone bow. Jian Han positioned 3 arrows simultaneously, making some spectators wonder at his technique while others commented that more arrows would be better. He released the first arrow, followed immediately by the second, then the third, striking and destroying part of a distant mountain. The people were amazed by the arrow's power, with some wondering which of the 3 had actually hit the target. The city lord corrected them, explaining that as one of his soldiers went to investigate where the arrows had landed, they discovered all 3 arrows had struck the exact same spot. This revelation shocked the city lord, who explained that Jian Han had fired the arrows in different directions, in different sequences, yet at the same time they had all hit the same target. He declared that this second competition was nothing less than exquisite and announced that Jian Han had won. The 2 families, Zhaoan, and all the people present were shocked that Zhaoan had been defeated so decisively. Even Zhaoan himself was surprised, saying it was impossible. Standing miserably, he reflected that he was supposed to be a leader, that Ruyu was going to be taken from him, and that betting money on himself had been a truly stupid move. This made Zhaoan think desperately that he couldn't lose, that his cousin could only be his. She should always belong to him. These thoughts filled him with evil intentions. However, Jian Han called out to him with an arrow in hand, saying it was time to concede this game to grandfather. Zhaoan disagreed, strengthening his body to the maximum. Jian Han released the arrow, and while Zhaoan was able to catch it, the projectile still pierced through his hand. This made Zhaoan even more furious. He told Jian Han that since he was looking for death, he would fulfill that wish for him, promising to make him pay 10 times as much pain and torture him until death. Jian Han smirked and called out, "First," as mist began forming around him. He told Zhaoan to look carefully as he unleashed his true power, revealing his battlefield 9th grade cultivation level. As the 2 clashed their attacks together, the surrounding people all questioned how a 2nd grade cultivator could possibly defeat a 9th grade warrior, saying that Jian Han would surely be killed. Ruyu called out to Zhaoan to retreat, but Zhaoan declined, declaring that today he would abolish Jian Han and make her his woman. However, Jian Han pushed him heavily in the face, sending him flying through the air. This surprised all the surrounding spectators. Zhaoan looked up and asked Jian Han if he was actually a 2nd realm cultivator. The people were amazed looking at Jian Han's posture, wondering if he could still be called a waste. Zhaoan attacked again, saying Jianhan would die today, but with a serious expression. Jianhan struck his stomach, making him cough up blood. Changing position for another strike to the face, he sent Zhaoan flying once more. Leaping after him, Jianhan kicked his head with tremendous force, sending him crashing to the ground with full impact. Zhang stood baffled at the scene, along with all the people who had gathered to watch. Zhaoan lay on the floor with blood covering his body, while Jianhan landed close to him, blood dripping from his own hands. Zhaoan, trying to get up, questioned how such a thing was possible. Zhang, with sweat on his face, called Jianhan a waste, saying it was impossible. Even a 6th-grade chi gatherer couldn't kill a 9th-grade cultivator. His father immediately slapped him, asking if he wasn't ashamed of saying such things. Holding his son, he wondered about Jianhan's deep ambitions, realizing this power had been hidden all along. Jianhan walked closer to Zhaoan, asking him if he couldn't figure it out. He placed his foot on Zhaoan's head and pulled back his clothing slightly, asking if he understood now. Zhaoan looked up in surprise, recognizing the tattoo as a broken pulse mark. Zhang shouted in realization that Jianhan had actually forced himself to break his pulse. He explained that broken veins could increase the body's strength tenfold, but there would be no more progress in cultivation for the rest of his life. Zhang laughed, calling out to his father that Jianhan was truly a waste. His meridians were broken, and he was only at the 6th grade of cultivation. The father reflected that since Jianhan was still a teenager, this meant he was no longer a cause for concern in the long term. Ruyu, on the other hand, wondered why he had used such an extreme method to gain temporary power. Jianhan decided to continue grinding Zhaoan's face into the ground. Everyone fell silent as Zhaoan lay motionless on the floor. The people were shocked, realizing that he had actually dared to kill Zhaoan. Jianhan called out about the wedding, smiling as he looked at Ruyu, and asked if they could continue with the ceremony. Ryu told him yes. The Lin family beauty thought to herself that Jianhan had actually concealed so much power, but fortunately, even though he had emerged from this ordeal, he still didn't deserve her. Later, during the wedding ceremony, both Jianhan and Ruyu stood together as they were announced as husband and wife. The guests then sent them home to begin their married life. In their room, Jianhan was blushing, thinking about the flower candles in the house and how the beautiful woman was by his side. Such a spring festival moment was worth a fortune. He raised his hand, wanting to remove the veil from Ruyu's head, but she removed it herself, saying she was surprised. Since he was not actually a waste and had the courage to kill, she asked why he wasn't more confident. Jianhan said he had no tolerance for pretense, thinking that there was no longer time to waste and wondering what she would say next, that they should proceed with the important matters of their wedding night. Ryu asked why he had killed Zhaoan that day, pointing out that the Zhaoan family would not let him go, and that he had suffered from breaking his pulse. Jianhan came closer to her, grasping her waist and pulling her nearer to him. He told her that today's wedding had many watching eyes. If he hadn't broken his meridians, what would have happened with the Zhang and Lin families? They would have taken strict precautions against them. This surprised Ryu. He also explained that they could go as far as telling the entire country about their hidden strength, joining hands to deal with the Yin family. At that time, the Yin family would be outnumbered. He placed his hand on her back, trying to loosen her clothing, and smiled as he explained that by cutting off his meridians, in their eyes he was just a flash in the wind, in the end, still just a waste. Ryu was surprised, thinking that Jianhan had unexpectedly broken his meridians as a sacrifice, which was too great a price to pay. She left his embrace, holding his two hands and thanking him for what he had done, saying they were now family. Wondering how long she would continue holding him, Ryu told him that since he had lost his pulse, he would always be her husband. As long as he remained in the main palace, she would always protect him. Jianhan thought to himself that he didn't need to tell her about his plan to rebuild his meridians and grow even stronger. Releasing his hands, she turned away, telling him he would just have to live in the main palace for 1 year. If he didn't want to stay after that, she would ask her father to give him a large sum of money to start a new life. Coming closer to her, he told her not to think too much about such distant concerns. Pushing her gently onto the bed and removing the lace from her clothing, he began to remove his own garments, saying that tonight's spring festival was worth 1,000 gold pieces. They should enjoy their wedding night together. As Jianhan moved forward, ready to proceed, she immediately shifted to the other side of the bed. He thought to himself, why this had to be so difficult. She immediately told him she was sorry, explaining that she had wanted to be an honorary couple with him from the beginning. She said that while she wanted to accept him, she really couldn't go through with it at that moment. Jianhan asked if she wanted him to stay alone in an empty room. She said she understood his needs and would let Xianger stay with him tonight. She was thinking that since she only had 1 year to live, she couldn't delay others from finding happiness. He quickly accepted this arrangement. Calling out to the maid, Xianger entered and asked if the miss wanted anything. Ryu told her that tonight she would be serving him, which surprised the servant greatly. Ryu remained outside, listening to everything they were saying inside. Jianhan told the maid to remove her outer garments. Inside, the maid said there was something she didn't understand, but he came closer, placing his hands on her back and telling her not to be nosy. He didn't plan to sleep with her. She called him master, asking if this wasn't happening too fast. He told her not to speak nonsense, giving her medicine and a cultivation book. He explained that he had just tested her physique and she should practice according to this method, which would be 10 times faster than her current practice. He also gave her a body-tempering pill, saying she should take it, and if she didn't, he wouldn't do anything to her. She was surprisingly happy with these gifts. He looked at her thoughtfully, realizing that he had actually encountered a body of purine, which was worth cultivating. He reflected that leaving such potential untapped would actually be wasteful. The next day, Jianhan appeared fully dressed, saying he was worn out after practicing cultivation all night. The maid followed behind him, and when she saw her mistress, Ryu looked at Jianhan angrily and told the servant to go serve tea. Jianhan called out to Ryu to wait for him, thinking she had misunderstood the situation. He reflected that it was terrible when women became jealous. Inside the main house, his father-in-law told him that since he had entered their family, he would normally be sheltered and protected. Of course, if he did something shameful, the Yin family would not let him go unpunished. Placing his hand on Jianhan's head, he asked if he understood. Jianhan nodded his agreement. His mother-in-law shouted at her husband, telling him not to be so fierce with their new son-in-law. Meeting with Jianhan, she told him that although he couldn't improve his cultivation anymore, she could see that he truly loved Ryu. She urged him to work hard to give her a grandson as soon as possible. This made Jianhan enthusiastic, saying he would go all out to fulfill this request. As Ryu moved away from the conversation, Jianhan thought to himself that his wife was proving to be a little difficult to handle. Jianhan coughed, wanting to say something, but was interrupted by an announcement that the county government would be visiting that afternoon. The little prince and the housekeeper of the county governor would be coming, accompanied by a senior official called Qinhang. Ryu asked what her father planned to do about this visit. He explained that he knew His Royal Highness would become angry upon learning of her marriage, but with his current position, it wouldn't be easy for him to openly attack the Yen family. Ryu pointed out that this time it was the prince's brother who was coming, and he might make rude requests that would be difficult to refuse. The city lord stated that as long as their requests were not too excessive, he would promise them anything. However, Jianhan asked what would happen if they took things too far. Ryu replied that they could only retaliate in such a case. The city lord's wife asked Jianhan if he had any ideas. He admitted that he didn't have any specific plans and suggested they should follow her father's approach. However, he added that if the visitors asked for too much, then they could only resort to killing them. The lord slammed his hand on the table, calling this nonsense. He demanded to know what would happen to the soldiers and the county government if they were killed. He warned that this would push the main house into a dead end and told Jianhan not to interrupt if he didn't understand the situation. Jianhan told the city lord not to be too anxious and explained his reasoning. He pointed out that since they couldn't get married now, in order to win Piaxue City, the visitors would definitely pressure his father-in-law with the king's orders. He asked if the city lord would agree to hand over military power if they made such a request. The city lord declared that it would be impossible for him to do so. Jianhan then asked what would happen if they threatened him using Ryu as leverage. She boldly declared that she would rather commit suicide than let them succeed. Both men shouted at her, rejecting this idea completely. Jianhan took hold of her hands, making her wonder if he really cared so much about her. The mother-in-law dropped her cup and addressed Jianhan directly. Since he had proposed killing their enemies, she wondered if he had a countermeasure in mind. He replied that there were 3 effective methods available. His mother-in-law pointed out that while it was easy to talk about such plans, among the people who were coming was a grandmaster. She asked how they could possibly kill someone of that caliber. Jianhan produced a book and told his father-in-law not to worry about other matters. He instructed him to concentrate on practicing the set of skills described in the book, along with taking the quenching body pill, explaining that it would have amazing effects. The city lord was shocked to discover that it was a mythical-level skill manual. Jianhan smiled and assured him that he would arrange the remaining details of their plan. At the training grounds, soldiers gathered before Jianhan and Ryu, all carrying their weapons and ready to fight. Jianhan was pleased to see that the military was well organized and had a murderous intent. Ryu informed him that all 3,000 guards of Piaoxue City were present, and he should choose for himself. However, she questioned whether he was really picking only 30 soldiers to face a grandmaster. He smiled and replied that he didn't focus on raw power. Looking at the assembled troops, he shouted a greeting to his comrades. All the soldiers fell silent, and no one responded. Coughing awkwardly, Jianhan told Ryu that she should train the soldiers better in the future. Ryu suggested they should choose someone first and asked if Jianhan would like to know about their cultivation and combat capabilities. However, he refused, saying he didn't look at those factors, which shocked the soldiers. Jianhan shouted to the soldiers, telling them they should know they would be performing a special mission that was very dangerous. It concerned the life and death of Piaoxue City, and if anyone wanted to leave, they could do so now. This raised the soldiers' motivation, which pleased Jianhan. He announced that he wanted to state a few conditions, telling them that if anyone met these requirements, they should come to the stage. Ryu wondered what these conditions would be, thinking they might include melee expertise, scouting abilities, or excellent archery skills. That must be it, she thought. However, he called out for anyone who understood musical temperament, shocking the soldiers. Even Ryu questioned what he had said, but he confirmed his decision. He asked if there wasn't anyone among the 3,000 soldiers who possessed the skill. The soldiers talked among themselves, wondering what he was talking about. They questioned whether he wasn't looking for assassination or fighting skills. Moreover, they noted that temperament was something ladies practiced. How could warriors who were meant to kill need such a skill? At that moment, someone raised his hand, asking if he could join. Jianhan asked him to come forward and state his name. Greeting him respectfully, the soldier said he was Luo Sheng. This shocked all the soldiers, who considered this man to have the weakest strength among all of them, only at the first chi gathering level. They wondered if he could perform such a special task. Jianhan then called out the second condition. The soldiers thought the first one must have been a joke, since war always needed soldiers. They assumed that next he would definitely choose those who were powerful. With a straight face, he called out for transsexuals. All the soldiers fell to the floor in shock, except for one who stood bravely. Before Jianhan could dismiss the idea, the soldier raised his hand, saying he had learned feminine actions from his mother. This shocked the others, who thought they didn't expect him to be such a person. Jianhan called him forward, telling him to state his name, which was Du Weiyang. Jianhan laughed, saying very good. Ryu thought that although she couldn't see through his intentions, she wondered what the remaining conditions would be. He continued by asking who could sew cloth without embroidering, who could perform acrobatics, and who could kill a cow. He called out all sorts of unusual requirements until they had completed the roster of 30 soldiers. Ryu asked again if 30 soldiers would really be okay to fight a grandmaster. Jianhan asked her if she thought he had picked them for a banquet, which made her wonder if he hadn't just had a party. He explained that with the combined strength of these people, even a grandmaster's body protection would be broken. With anger, she told him that a soldier's life was not something to be played with. Touching her face gently, he told her to rest assured. He acknowledged that their strength was currently weak, but stated that 5 hours would be enough to make them stronger. He called out to the chosen ones to follow him, smiling as he said that as for how to kill the grandmaster, she would naturally know by evening. The remaining soldiers talked among themselves, wondering what he was thinking by selecting people with such unusual skills for such an important task. They felt he was pushing them toward an early grave. The most pitiful thing, they thought, was that their leader had actually married such a waste. Ryu shouted at them, asking what they were talking about. She told them they would practice twice what they normally did. They all accepted this punishment, thinking that their miss was quite protective of him. She looked on, wondering if 5 hours would really be enough for him to accomplish his plan. After 5 hours had passed, the soldiers from the government arrived, together with the prince and the grandmaster. The people watched with curiosity as the procession entered the city. The prince asked his butler why his brother should be so concerned about such a small city. The butler replied that after thinking deeply, he had heard that Ryu was indeed beautiful. The prince wondered how beautiful she could be if she didn't know proper manners, referring to her as a girl who dared to get married before the intended groom arrived. He declared that he couldn't be so light-hearted about this matter. His butler supported his decision with enthusiasm. Smiling, the prince said his brother wouldn't properly ask for damaged goods, but he didn't mind playing with them. Looking back, he told his butler to cooperate with him, which the butler agreed to do. The little prince wore a grin on his face as he prepared to make them pay the price for their actions. At the gates of the main house, the city lord and Ryuxita welcomed the prince and his troops. The young prince's eyes immediately examined Ryuxita's figure and beauty, licking his lips as he remarked on her appearance. He commented that with such a face and figure, it was no wonder Brother Wang wanted to marry her as his wife. When he mentioned hearing that she was already married, Ryuxita remembered the rumors about the little prince being a lecher, though she hadn't expected him to be quite so brazen. She confirmed that she was indeed married. The prince clapped his hands and laughed, declaring it a pity since she would have made a good sister-in-law. This exchange made both the city lord and Ryuxita realize they truly needed to follow Jiang Han's plan. The city lord smiled diplomatically, paving the way for the prince to enter while mentioning that he had prepared a banquet for them. As they walked inside, the prince informed him that His Highness had a message for him. The banquet hall was indeed ready for them, with food filling the table. The little prince and his butler took their seats at the round table, followed by the city lord, his wife, and Ryuxio. Upon seeing the women, the prince quickly examined their figures, telling the city lord that he was very blessed to have such a virtuous wife and such a stunning daughter. Yinqing replied that the prince was too kind, though inwardly he thought that not only did the prince have ideas about his daughter, but he also dared to look at his wife with such intentions. He reflected that Jiang Han was right. This prince needed to be eliminated. The prince proceeded to inquire about the son-in-law, noting that he had heard the man was indeed a talented genius and asking why he wasn't present. The city lord explained that his son-in-law couldn't join them at the table, as it wouldn't be appropriate to strain the prince's eyes with his presence. However, he suggested they should still bring Jiang Han, so that others wouldn't say His Highness was being too domineering. The city lord mentioned that fortunately he had already sent someone to call for him, thinking to himself that Jiang Han had predicted the prince would definitely summon him. At Jiang Han's residence, someone called for him while he was stretching. Inside, 30 guards sat looking as though they had been through hell. After a while, Jiang Han arrived at the banquet hall where everyone was eating. He quickly greeted the young prince, who looked at him and asked if he was indeed Jiang Han. He confirmed his identity while Ryuxia thought his acting was excellent. The prince, meanwhile, concluded that this man was indeed a waste and couldn't understand what Ryuxia saw in him. Smiling, the prince announced that now that everyone was present, His Royal Highness wouldn't beat around the bush. He explained that he had originally come to raise the country's profile, but now that Ryuxia was married, the palace needed to determine what should be done. Facing the city lord directly, he declared that his father had a condition that the city's main palace must agree to. When asked about the specific conditions, the prince stated that they must go to the main palace in Tianfeng country and surrender the military power of the castle guard. The prince asked if the castle lord had any opinion on the matter. The city lord immediately requested that he be given time to reconsider, but the prince replied that he wouldn't have long to think. Continuing his demands, the prince pointed to where the city lord's wife and daughter sat, declaring that they needed to serve him. He explained that His Highness enjoyed talking to people over wine, and since his wife and Ryuxia were indeed beautiful, he asked if the city lord would mind their company. The city lord, filled with anger, thought that this Chi-Jia wanted to bring disaster to Snow City while relying on the protection of the Grand Master beside him. Jiang Han tapped the city lord's shoulder and took over the conversation, telling the prince that if he was looking for someone to talk to, he could find 2 beautiful women for him. He suggested there was no need to bother his mother-in-law and his wife. With a smile on his face, the prince asked Jiang Han what he was talking about, stating bluntly that he was going to sleep with his wife and mother-in-law that very day. This declaration made Ryuxita and her mother extremely irritated. Jiang Han told the prince that he was really awe-inspiring, asking if he wasn't going to let the city's main house go free today. Repeating his earlier statement, the prince told him it all depended on whether he could make His Highness happy. He declared that although the daughter-in-law and mother-in-law were both beautiful like flowers, they lacked some refinement. He suggested that if Jiang Han and his father-in-law could kneel down in the hall and help play music for His Highness, perhaps he would let them go. This demand greatly shocked the city lord. Jiang Han calmly told the prince that he was too arrogant, asking if he wasn't afraid of their rebellion, especially since he was in their snow city. The prince laughed, asking Jiang Han if he thought he was a fool. He warned that if Snow City dared to go against him, hundreds of thousands of residents would be buried alive with him. He pointed out the Grand Master beside him as evidence of his power. Jiang Han smiled with serious intent, telling the prince that if he insisted on his demands, then he was sorry, but he would rebel. Clapping his hands, the 30 soldiers whom he had personally trained came forward, ready to give His Highness a gift. The little prince was heavily shocked when all the soldiers carried bags that were dripping with blood. Upon seeing them, he realized they contained the heads of his own soldiers. Shouting at the city lord, the prince demanded to know if he dared to rebel. But the city lord and Jiang Han, both wearing serious expressions, told the prince that tonight would be his last. The young prince declared the city lord dead and called out to his butler to give him his corpse, which the butler accepted. The Grand Master quickly moved forward to attack the city lord, unleashing his own power. The two clashed together with tremendous force, exchanging furious attacks at speeds faster than the eye could follow. When their fists collided, the force sent the Grand Master back slightly, while the city lord was sent flying and crashed into the wall with blood visible at his mouth. The Grand Master asked if he had also broken through to the Grand Master level, which shocked the prince, who wondered how this could be possible. If the city lord had thoroughly broken free, wasn't a situation very dangerous? Jiang Han continued, telling His Highness that he hadn't expected this development. He pointed out that the master beside him didn't seem to have much of an advantage now, suggesting it would be better for the prince to kneel down and accept 3 slaps rather than be killed. This pained the prince, who asked if Jiang Han wanted to die. The Grand Master then reassured the prince that he should have peace of mind. He explained that the city lord had just broken through, and the vitality in his body wasn't enough to condense properly. Since he had been injured by his move just now, he was sure to kill him within 10 moves. The prince declared that he would cut off Jiang Han's arms and legs and sew his mouth shut. He wanted him to see for himself how he would play with his daughter, so he would know how he had offended His Highness. Jiang Han told the Grand Master not to hurry, as his juniors had specially prepared some extra gifts for him. He mentioned that the first big gift had already been offered by the juniors, and if he didn't believe it, he should take a look at his palm. Looking at it, the Grand Master saw something like poison, which made him wonder since he hadn't eaten or drunk anything since arriving. He shouted, demanding to know when this had happened. Jiang Han replied, asking if he didn't think the air in the city's main palace was particularly sweet that day. He explained that this had been specially prepared for him. At first, he might not be poisoned by using his vitality, but since the senior had used his vitality in the battle just now, the poison gas would enter his body along with the vitality. The master asked if it was a poison trap, acknowledging that his method was clever. He told Jiang Han that he had watched several tricks in his life, but now he only had 30% of his power remaining, as did his father-in-law. The second gift. Jiang Han confirmed this, saying it wouldn't be his father-in-law who would face him. This was the second gift, and he hoped the Grand Master would accept it. Clapping his hands, fully armed soldiers appeared, equipped with shields and large hammers. The Xiantai heavy armor. Looking at them, the Grand Master identified them as wearing Xiantai heavy armor, asking if those people were truly willing to give their lives to deal with him. The little prince smiled and asked if that was all there was to it, laughing as he called Jiang Han an idiot. He questioned how 10 soldiers at the gathering atmosphere level could deal with a Grand Master, asking if Jiang Han thought it would be sufficient just to put on a turtle shell for protection. The city lord was surprised, thinking that there were 3,000 soldiers available. Why would Jiang Han pick only these 10? Even Ryuxiu at the back had the same thoughts about the seemingly inadequate numbers. Jiang Han smiled, saying that if they couldn't understand his strategy, it was because they couldn't see the bigger picture. With seriousness, the Grand Master declared that since Jiang Han wanted these people to die, he would fulfill that wish. The Grand Master attacked the soldiers with full force, declaring that hundreds of gathering energy cultivators were not as good as him, not to mention just 10. The soldiers took a defensive formation, stacking up on each other in a straight line. The energy and force flowed through all of them, sending shockwaves to the surrounding areas, also affecting Ryuxiu, who sensed that the Grand Master was indeed powerful. She wondered if those 10 soldiers would survive. Jiang Han, with a confident face, told her to rest assured. She was very surprised and wondered why he remained so relaxed in the face of such overwhelming energy. However, the Grandmaster's palm strike was stopped by the soldiers' shields. He was finally halted, with none of the soldiers moving a single inch. When the smoke cleared, the master was surprised, thinking about how those people had resisted him. The prince was also shocked, asking how it was possible. Even his father-in-law wondered how the soldiers had been able to accomplish that feat. Jiang Han looked confident because he had strengthened their bodies with medicinal materials. Each soldier's strength had improved at least 3 grades. The method of shield deflection was also employed, making it not difficult to block a hit from a Grandmaster. However, the Grandmaster's strength was indeed more terrifying than imagined, as even the thick and special black iron shields were bent from the impact. The Grandmaster quickly switched positions, saying this formation had some advantages, though it was a pity that all sides were flawed. Moving to attack again, he immediately felt tremendous pressure and stopped, wondering what was happening. Looking around, he saw a soldier coming at him to attack with a hammer. He was barely able to escape the attack, stepping back quickly. The prince couldn't believe what he saw, wondering how a Grandmaster could be injured by a couple of soldiers. The Grandmaster looked back and saw another soldier beating a war drum. The city lord was able to recognize what the soldier was doing. It was a sonic attack skill. The soldier continued beating the drum heavily with the Tianlai magic sound technique. Jiang Han explained that with the war drum directly hitting the viscera, the effect was quite good. The city lord, looking at Jiang Han, thought that this was an extremely rare attack method for the entire Tianhua continent. He wondered if Jiang Han actually possessed this skill and where he had come from with so many precious secrets. Just then, the Grandmaster angrily released a large portion of his energy, sending shockwaves toward the soldiers. The prince, looking at the scene, called the Grandmaster a waste, declaring that if he couldn't even beat these inferior soldiers, then he didn't deserve to return to the country alive. Accepting his predicament, smoke came out of the Grandmaster's mouth as he prepared his ultimate technique. All the soldiers readied their defenses, but they were all sent flying by the energy of the master, who released a massive amount of sliding shockwaves. With shock, the city lord identified it as body protection energy. In fury, the Grandmaster walked toward them, declaring that all of them would die. All the soldiers lay helpless on the floor as the Grandmaster stood with anger, telling Jiang Han that he could make him cough up blood. He declared it impressive but explained that the power of a Grandmaster's body protection was unimaginable by ordinary people like them. He announced that next, he would kill them one by one. The Yin family was in shock while Jiang Han remained silent. The little prince began to laugh, saying he had almost forgotten that a Grandmaster's body had protection. Calling Jiang Han boy, he taunted that these soldiers couldn't beat the Grandmaster and dared him to come and fight. The city lord explained that once the protection was formed, even extremely sharp weapons could not penetrate it. Jiang Han, standing at the front, told him to rest assured. He had definitely been considerate and had prepared a third gift. The environment suddenly changed to a chessboard, which again surprised the Grandmaster, who wondered why he was on a chess-playing field. Ryuxia thought that the soldiers who were able to play chess had been selected to arrange this trapped formation. Jiang Han continued, explaining that this was an exquisite game. Although it was only one array formation, the changes within the array were unpredictable. He suggested that the senior might wish to try breaking the game. At that moment, both Jiang Han, his family, and the soldiers disappeared, leaving only the Grandmaster alone on the chessboard. The master became extremely cautious, looking at his surroundings and immediately noticing something approaching. He released his protective shield as projectiles struck it, but they weren't able to penetrate. The master declared that they still dared to attack, calling his body indestructible. The attacks continued hitting with tremendous force, which alerted him, though he wasn't sure of the skill being used. He laughed, saying he could still block them, but then he saw many large hammers stacked up on each other, ready to attack him. As they hit him, the Grandmaster's confidence grew, declaring he could still block them after so many hits. However, another hammer was added on top of the stacked hammers, which he quickly noticed. Blood splashed as the little prince put his hands on his head in shock. The Grandmaster tried to stand on his feet while blood came out of his mouth. The city lord shouted in shock that his body protection had really been broken. Jiang Han smirked, asking if he thought it was the hammer that had first attacked him. In fact, it was a nail that had been hammered with high speed, and the force generated by the chi was also increased through geometric multiplication. The Grandmaster clenched his teeth as blood splashed out. He quickly sent a barrage of attacks everywhere with full force, shouting for them to get him out. He felt something approaching and immediately put his guard up. A needle quickly appeared near his eyes, and unable to react quickly enough, it pierced his eye. He shouted in pain as Jiang Han emerged from the shadows, smiling as he thought that what the Grandmaster had seen was only bait. The real killer was always silent. The Grandmaster continued throwing his attacks in random directions while the prince was asking who it was, telling them not to kill him and shouting for the waste Grandmaster to get out and save him. Jiang Han and his family sat in their seats with food at their sides as Jiang Han asked them if the circus looked entertaining, watching the Grandmaster and the prince struggle helplessly. Jiang Han gave Ryuxia grapes, surprising her, then raised his hands forward calling for the next game. The soldiers quickly attacked with full force but were repelled by the Grandmaster, who fell on his knees out of exhaustion. As the array vanished, the little prince looked up, seeing the state of his butler, and asked how it was possible that 10 gathering atmosphere soldiers could make a Grandmaster like this. The city lord was also shocked that Grandmaster Itong was this wounded by 30 soldiers, saying that if they were ordinary soldiers, they would have been torn apart by him. Jiang Han stood boldly in front of the Grandmaster, asking if he was satisfied with the gifts from his junior. The Grandmaster, closing his one good eye, said he had killed so many enemies in his life and acknowledged that the city master had really found a good son-in-law. He guessed correctly that the idea of killing this old man had been brought up by Jiang Han. Jiang Han replied that it was indeed the humble opinion of the younger generation, thinking that despite his body being seriously injured, the Grandmaster still stood. Such a person was really rare, but unfortunately. The old man asked him if he killed both him and the little prince. Wasn't he afraid of the government's army? Jiang Han told him to rest assured. He explained that tonight the hosts were happy, and the little prince would bring the beauty sent by the snowy city with great momentum. He had already prepared everything. The old man began to laugh, calling it a good plan and praising the little beast for being really good at giving surprises. He said he recognized the plan, but at such a young age, Jiang Han was going to die. He told Jiang Han never to let his guard down, declaring that even if he died, he would pull him down with him. This shocked Jiang Han greatly. Both the city lord and Ryuxia were shocked and shouted that this was not good. Ryuxia thought that the counterattack of a Grandmaster was beyond Jiang Han's power, but he stood his ground as the Grandmaster came with full speed, shouting that even if he died, Jiang Han would die too. With seriousness, Jiang Han shouted back, telling the old man to come and stepping forward. The old man raised his hands up, ready to end him with one move, but seeing the confident expression on Jiang Han's face, he stopped in his tracks, unable to utter a single word. He fell on the floor in front of Jiang Han, who stood his ground. However, Jiang Han was sweating, thinking that his soul was imperfect and the strong action used soul power. Therefore his soul had almost collapsed. Ryuxia quickly ran toward the falling Jiang Han, quickly holding him as she asked if he was okay. He said he was fine. The city lord, who stood at one corner, saw the needle Jiang Han had used before and wondered what it was. Ryuxia tried to pull Jiang Han back up carefully. He looked at the little prince who had fallen on the floor, making contact with his gaze. Ryuxia decided to follow him, but was stopped. Jiang Han, with blood in his mouth, said he had told her that anyone who desired to harm his wife, he would kill himself. No one was an exception. Picking up the sword at his side, the little prince said in fear that he couldn't kill him, asking if Jiang Han didn't know who he was. He warned that if he killed him, the whole country would take revenge. With an irritated face, Jiang Han told him to take a good look at his stupid behavior, raising the sword to strike. Picking up his own blade, the prince asked if he dared to do it, but Jiang Han moved straight forward. The little prince thought about how he dared to despise him, also attacking and telling Jiang Han to die. However, Jiang Han casually cleaved the prince in two, throwing the sword away as he told the city lord that everything was ready. The soldiers carried the corpses of the Grandmaster and the prince away. The city lord's place was totally cleaned and quiet. After a while, still in the palace at the gate, the Yin family together with Jiang Han watched as what appeared to be the little prince, accompanied by girls and other people, loaded gifts for them. After loading the gifts, they told the prince that everything was ready. The people questioned the shining boxes they took, saying the little prince had taken a lot of good things from Piaoxua City. One of them said it was the city lord who had given them these treasures. Jiang Han smiled, saying that in the territory of Tiana country, the little prince would be attacked and the treasure would be looted. The city lord placed his hands on him, saying he had really made a big contribution that day. He admitted that if it were not for Jiang Han's suggestion, he really didn't know how to deal with the little prince. Bowing to him, Jiang Han told his father-in-law that he had also put in much effort, and since he was also part of the Yen family, he should normally do these things. Looking back at the moving carriage, he declared that if the little prince wanted to play with Ryuxiu, he must have deserved his fate. His mother-in-law told him that he had used only 30 soldiers to kill a grandmaster. It could be said he had done something amazing. She asked Jiang Han to say what he wanted as a reward. With seriousness, he told her that speaking of rewards, he needed to ask both his father and mother-in-law for something important. The city lord, with seriousness, said he would give anything, even if it meant going up mountains and through rivers. However, Jiang Han told him that he didn't need to be nervous, explaining that he needed to go to the Blackrock Mountains. In order to kill the Grand Master, he had used a forbidden technique, and now he needed to find a strange herb to repair the injury it had caused. The city lord warned him that there were many monsters in the Blackrock Mountains, as well as bandits such as the Haifeng's Hai Gang. He said Jiang Han would likely lose his life if he went there, asking if it was really necessary to go. Jiang Han told him that he must go. Ryuxiu came closer and told him that it was too dangerous for him to enter the Blackrock Mountains now, asking if she could go with him. However, he told her no, saying there were more important things to consider. Although the immediate crisis was resolved, the country's government and Zhang Jialan's ambitions were not dead, they still could not be taken lightly. Pulling his hands out, he held 2 books, telling her that one was specially prepared for her and the other for the general lieutenant to practice. He mentioned that she had also seen the effectiveness of the 30 warriors who had trained through his methods. Looking at the books, she told him that he had considered so much for the family. He came close to her, touching her hair, which made her blush. She told him that if he could come back safely this time, she would be with him. Making a baby face, he asked if she meant just with him. Removing his hands, she said she meant that she would wait for him to come back, and that she would accompany him to visit the Jiang house to meet his parents-in-law. He said it was a pity, looking at her as he saw that she was trying to hide her blushing. As he prepared to leave, he looked back with the professor's expression, thinking that there was definitely something developing between them. When he returned this time, the family would definitely increase in size. Later, Jiang Han wore new clothes and climbed onto a horse, beginning to ride at full speed. He left behind both his wife and his maid, who both wished that he would come back safely. At the Blackrock Mountains, which were covered with mighty animals, there were many hidden beasts among them. In the depths of the mountains, the stronger the strength of the Yuan beast became. Deep within the forest, Jiang Han remained seated on his horse, lost in contemplation. After 1 month of cultivation in this wilderness, the soul-nourishing elixir had enabled him to reach the mountain stage, significantly enhancing his strength. He meditated atop his mount with both seriousness and calm focus, his mind centered on his progress. Suddenly, his eyes snapped open as he sensed the abundant vitality that overflowed throughout the area. The energy was so thick it was almost tangible. However, his moment of awareness was interrupted when he detected a presence approaching from behind. Jiang Han had been careful to suppress his full cultivation aura to avoid attracting powerful beasts that would be difficult to handle. Despite his precautions, a monster had found him. When he turned to face the threat, shock registered on his features as he identified the creature, a black leopard, its sleek form radiating dangerous energy. Without hesitation, he leaped from his horse and placed his hand on his sword hilt. A first-order monster beast, he muttered, recognizing the chi-peen level of the creature. Energy gathered around him as he called out, "Come then." He knew well that this was a red flame gale leopard, an elemental beast whose cultivation practice of chiefing made it formidable. Elemental beasts of the same level were invariably much stronger than human warriors. Unless one was a genius who possessed powerful martial arts, few would dare to engage in single combat with a beast of equivalent rank. Drawing his sword, Jiang Han reflected that this encounter served one of his trip's primary purposes, to practice the derivative combat skills of the 7 returning swords technique from the Xian Huang's Wahuaju. This would be the perfect opportunity to test the first step of his basic blade work. The confrontation began as both combatants clashed with tremendous force. Jiang Han executed his technique, 10,000 knives, attempting to overwhelm the leopard's defenses. However, he was quickly repelled by the beast's superior physical strength. Worthy of being a beast indeed, he acknowledged with grudging respect. The creature's power exceeded that of human warriors of the same rank, just as he had expected. A smirk crossed Jiang Han's face as he confirmed that this monster would serve as an excellent training partner for his sword techniques. Facing the leopard directly, he could see that the beast regarded him with similar assessment, recognizing him as a worthy opponent for its own purposes. After exchanging many strikes with the beast, the leopard began to retreat. Jiang Han pursued relentlessly, counting each strike he delivered. The leopard roared at him in frustration, as if asking why he continued the chase. Jiang Han smiled coldly and declared that no one would save the beast now. With precise force and fluid movement, he delivered a final slice with his sword, counting it as his 300th strike. Standing over the dead leopard, he murmured that he had used exactly 300 knife strikes, lamenting his lack of efficiency. Extracting a crystal from the beast's corpse, he examined it carefully. This leopard was merely the lowest first-order, 7th-grade elemental beast, yet its elemental core is quite substantial, he observed. The metanucleus was the crystallized essence of Yuan beast energy. Yuan beasts' cultivation depended entirely on the metanucleus in their heads. As their strength increased, the metanucleus would grow larger and the elemental force within would become more pure, making higher-grade cores increasingly precious. However, this energy crystal was extremely volatile. Warriors could not directly absorb it without falling into disarray. The metacore could be used in alchemy or embedded in weapons as refining materials. Such disadvantages did not exist for Jiang Han. Breaking the crystal, he channeled the power of Xian Huang's Ju, easily filtering out the violent elements of the elemental core. Clasping his hands together, he noted that this 8th-grade gathered energy had exceeded his expectations for the metanucleus's effectiveness. Smiling, he declared his intention to hunt more Yuan beasts. As he ventured deeper into the forest, he calculated that this endeavor would cost him approximately 9,700 yuan, but the investment would be worthwhile. That day became one the monsters of the Blackrock Mountains would long remember. The horror of being pursued by hundreds of knife strikes. Standing amidst the corpses of numerous monsters, Jiang Han opened his hand, allowing the aura of dozens of crystals to flow out. Closing his eyes, he wondered if the accumulated energy from these cores had reached the Geopine level. When he opened his eyes, he felt something strange stirring within his body. A dragon-like aura surrounded him, and he could sense the immense pressure of this newfound power. The aura immediately dispersed as he regained control. Looking at his hands with amazement, he smiled and said he had unexpectedly gained something extraordinary. Jiang Han's body actually possessed the bloodline of the ancient ancestral dragon. Upon closer examination, he realized this ancestral dragon bloodline was far stronger than that of ordinary emperors, though its concentration remained frustratingly low. If not for absorbing such a large quantity of Yuan beast cores, he feared this bloodline might never have awakened in his lifetime. He understood that to fully awaken this blood heritage, he would need an encounter with a very powerful dragon bloodline source. Quickly dismissing such thoughts, he reasoned that regardless of his bloodline potential, with his current strength, it was still too early to consider hunting dragon blood demon beasts. It would be better to focus on improving his own cultivation first, then seek the elixirs needed to stabilize his soul. Examining his blade, he concluded that now that he had mastered the basic knife technique, he could begin practicing the 7th return to the sword. Venturing even deeper into the forest, he declared it was time to hunt first-order peak monsters to achieve a breakthrough in his realm before entering the mountains to search for the medicine he needed. Still within the forest depths, in an area resembling a stronghold, Jiang Han found himself under attack. Smoke swirled around him as he managed to dodge a projectile that flew past. Drawing his sword, he quickly realized the vitality signature belonged to someone at the Tongmai realm mastery level. An arrow had been shot at him, followed immediately by multiple arrows flying toward him at tremendous speed. He stood his ground as one arrow nearly struck him, embedding itself in the ground where he had been lying. The position seemed familiar, and the arrow bore a poisonous coating. Filled with anger, he shouted, "Who dares attack me? Show yourself immediately." Stepping out of the shadows, a figure emerged and spoke with amusement. "Not bad at all. A Geopine realm cultivator who can escape my soul-chasing arrow. Jiang Han was shocked to discover that his attacker had reached the peak of the Tongmai realm. The man possessed striking red hair and crimson eyes, and he regarded Jiang Han with interest. "It seems you're not the waste that the rumors claim you to be," the mysterious assailant declared, his voice carrying both threat and curiosity. Jiang Han analyzed his opponent's cultivation level, thinking that even the city guards of Piaoshui City at the Great Commander level would struggle against such power. He narrowed his eyes and asked, "Are you from Haifeng Hai?" The man laughed heartily, clearly pleased. "You have good eyesight." "That's right." He grinned menacingly as he continued, "I am Old Nine Butcher, master of the 9th village of Haifeng Village." Jiang Han repeated the name under his breath, his blade ready in his hand. He recalled the reputation of the 9 chiefs of Haifeng Jai, each bearing a notorious nickname. This Old Nine's moniker was the Butcher, and rumors spoke of his extreme cruelty. The man was said to favor using a giant sword to decapitate his victims, then kick their severed heads like balls for sport. Jiang Han couldn't fathom how many lives had been claimed by that great sword. "Did you come out of the mountains specifically for me?" Jiang Han asked, maintaining his defensive stance. Laughing again, the man nodded. "The son-in-law of the city's palace is indeed smart. I was instructed to take your head." Jiang Han smiled coldly at this revelation. "You're the leader of Haifeng Hai Village, aren't you? I'm curious. Who has the authority to order you around? Is there someone else behind you in Haifeng Village? Perhaps the Lin family? Or the Zhang family?" The man's smile widened as he stepped closer. "Good boy. You actually caught the loophole in my speech. No wonder my eldest brother warned me not to talk with you and just cut you down immediately." As Jiang Han managed to dodge the man's initial attacks, he thought to himself that although his opponent possessed tremendous strength, his intellect seemed lacking. The butcher attacked straight toward Jiang Han's face with brutal directness. As Jiang Han dodged, the attack sliced a fully grown tree clean in half. "If that attack had connected, my wife would have been widowed," he muttered grimly. Hearing mention of his wife, the man entered full power mode. His eyes changed color, as did his aura, and his strength multiplied dramatically. He launched himself at Jiang Han, who found himself barely able to withstand the terrible power unleashed upon him. Each attack overwhelmed Jiang Han, pushing him backward. He struggled to maintain his footing after being forced back several meters, realizing that his opponent was a warrior who specialized in pure physical strength. Against such overwhelming force, he had little chance of victory. The man continued laughing as he taunted, "Your perfect wife can't save you, so you can die with peace of mind. Rest assured, after I kill you, I'll help you take good care of her." This crude threat ignited Jiang Han's fury. He confronted the man directly, his anger overriding his tactical judgment. The butcher smiled at his reaction. "Do you dare to face me head-on?" Jiang Han remained grimly silent as he continued his strikes. The two warriors exchanged fierce clashes, their weapons meeting in showers of sparks. However, the disparity in their cultivation levels became increasingly apparent with each exchange. Finally, recognizing the futility of direct confrontation, Jiang Han made a tactical decision. He turned and fled deeper into the forest, the butcher's mocking laughter echoing behind him as he retreated to reassess his options. "Dream on," the butcher shouted after him, drawing an arrow and taking aim. He shot it toward Jiang Han, who called back desperately, "Why are you chasing me so relentlessly? I'm not as strong as you." With unbridled anger, the man roared, "Are you looking for your own way to die? No one can save you today." He paused, observing Jiang Han's direction with confusion. Why is this fool running toward the inner forest? After a moment, his crude grin returned. "After I kill you, I'll go console your mother-in-law as well." Jiang Han continued dodging the barrage of attacks while thinking strategically. The butcher clearly didn't want him to flee into the mountains, repeatedly asking if he was seeking his own death by heading that direction. This only made Jiang Han more determined to continue deeper into the dangerous territory. As Jiang Han pressed further inward, the butcher stopped his pursuit and stared in disbelief. "So this kid actually dares to break into the inner forest," he muttered. He knew that under the ancient spell that protected these depths, there was almost no possibility of safely entering the inner forest alive. Suddenly, Jiang Han stopped and turned to face his pursuer. The butcher called out mockingly, "Are you finally afraid?" Jiang Han smiled knowingly. "The inner forest is indeed very dangerous. If you had mentioned that earlier, I would have escaped to the inner forest much sooner." He drew his sword with renewed confidence. The butcher laughed harshly. "It's a little too late to regret it now. Time to die." As both warriors prepared to attack, Jiang Han suddenly shouted, 100,000 volts. The butcher raised his weapon to block, wondering if this was some kind of hidden weapon technique. Looking around carefully, he initially thought Jiang Han was bluffing. Then his expression changed to one of horror. It's a fucking young Thunderbird, he gasped. But where are its parents? His question was answered immediately as the adult Thunderbirds appeared before him, their massive forms crackling with electrical energy. Terrified, the butcher tried to explain to the enraged birds, it's not your offspring I want to kill, it's him. He pointed frantically toward where Jiang Han had been moments before. But his words fell on deaf ears. The parent Thunderbirds attacked him with devastating lightning strikes, their fury unleashed upon the intruder who had threatened their young. Meanwhile, Jiang Han was already running away, a smirk playing across his face. He thought with satisfaction that the butcher would likely perish at the hands of the Thunderbirds. If he somehow survived, Jiang Han would show him what it truly meant to offend the wrong person. His triumphant thoughts were interrupted by the thunderous roar of a monster bear. The massive creature began pursuing him with determined ferocity. Am I really that attractive to every beast in this jungle? Jiang Han asked himself wryly as he quickened his pace, once again finding himself fleeing from a powerful predator in the depths of the treacherous inner forest. Jiang Han quickly spotted a mysterious cave ahead and darted inside. To his surprise, the violent bear stopped abruptly at the entrance, refusing to enter despite its aggressive pursuit. Why doesn't this violent bear dare to enter? He wondered aloud, catching his breath. There must be something significant about this valley. As he ventured deeper into the cave, he was struck by the profound silence that surrounded him. Now that there's nowhere to escape and the bear is waiting outside, but there seems to be no immediate danger here, he reasoned. I should use this opportunity to practice my sword martial arts and body cultivation techniques. He focused on the sevenfold Guiyuan Dao, a technique where each strike produced a heavy dark force that doubled in strength with every layer. The creator of this martial art had believed that sevenfold was the absolute limit of the technique. However, Jiang Han knew better. After the seventh fold, there were actually eighth and ninth folds. After mastering the ninth layer, the unity of Guiyuan and Yuan would represent the true state of great perfection. The practice method appeared deceptively simple, striking and cleaving in a special way, channeling vitality through 1,000, then 10,000 repetitions to inspire the dark energy within. He reflected that although he harbored resentment toward Yanqing City, he had to admit that she was indeed a martial arts prodigy. Any martial arts technique that could earn her appreciation was naturally extraordinarily difficult to master. Inside the cave, Jiang Han practiced relentlessly, periodically shouting in frustration. So what? Why is this so difficult to cultivate? He struck the cave wall before him repeatedly in anger, wondering if there existed any martial art that could be easily cultivated while still wielding tremendous power on a daily basis. Finally, after countless attempts, he managed to cleave the wall with a spark of the technique's true power. Why is it so powerful? He exclaimed in amazement. At that exact moment, a pair of massive eyes opened in the depths of the cave. A creature began rising from the underground water, its movement causing tremendous splashing as water cascaded everywhere. A massive shadow loomed over the cave as the beast emerged. Jiang Han's eyes widened with shock and surprise. Is that a dragon? Are there actually dragons in this remote valley? The creature revealed itself to be a black armor emperor dragon, a sub-dragon species of the fourth order. Among all dragon species, Jiang Han knew that the black armor imperial dragon could definitely rank in the top 3, possessing fourth order strength from the moment of birth. Observing the creature more carefully, he realized it shouldn't be long since this dragon was born, still relatively young for its species. If I could obtain the blood of this black-armored imperial dragon, my bloodline would be able to awaken, he thought with both excitement and trepidation. However, hiding in a corner of the cave, Jiang Han's practical nature reasserted itself. This was a peak fourth-order creature, equivalent in strength to a peak grandmaster. Given the terrifying combat power inherent to black-armored emperor dragons, even a first-rank Wuhou would definitely not be its opponent. As he contemplated his options while remaining hidden, escape seemed the wisest course of action. Forget it, he told himself firmly. My life is more important. My current strength is insufficient for such an encounter. Survival matters most. He reasoned that by now, the bear at the cave entrance would likely have moved on, allowing him a safer exit route than attempting to confront the legendary dragon before him. The dragon opened its massive mouth, revealing flames that danced within its throat. Sparks of fire illuminated the cave as the creature prepared to unleash its devastating breath attack. As Jiang Han observed the scene, he suddenly noticed the shadow of another person near the dragon. Who could that be? He wondered with growing alarm. When his eyes adjusted to the firelight, he was stunned to see a Wuho-level cultivator, a majestic young woman with an excellent figure and commanding presence. Her cultivation level was unmistakably powerful, radiating an aura that spoke of immense strength. These two could easily crush me to death, he thought grimly. However, the prospect of obtaining the black-armored Emperor Dragon's blood still tempted him. Weighing his options carefully, he muttered to himself, seeking wealth requires embracing danger, and there's encouragement from a beautiful woman present. He decided to observe the situation first before making his escape. If an opportunity arose to obtain the dragon's blood, he would seize it. Otherwise, retreat remained his primary plan. The young woman called out to the dragon, her voice carrying both authority and accusation. You broke out from the Black Rock Mountains and attacked human warrior towns, already violating the Bloodblade Treaty. The dragon roared heavily in response, its voice shaking the entire cave with thunderous power. She continued undeterred, her tone growing more severe. Even if you're a dragon, you must abide by the Bloodblade Treaty. This is the fate that awaits all land orcs who break their oaths. Drawing her sword with fluid grace, she declared, Today I will serve as the law enforcement officer of the Bloodblade Alliance. From his hiding place, Jiang Han was bewildered by her words. The Bloodblade Treaty? He wondered silently. Could it actually control Yuan beasts? What kind of power does this alliance possess, and why have I never heard of it before? The woman raised her sword across her face in a ceremonial stance, power resonating around her in visible waves of energy. Without further warning, she launched herself at the dragon with devastating speed. I will execute you here and now, she shouted as she attacked. Jiang Han watched with fascination and terror as the battle commenced. So it has finally started, he thought, recognizing that he was about to witness a confrontation between two beings whose power far exceeded his own understanding. Both the dragon and the woman clashed in a spectacular display of power. She demonstrated remarkable agility, evading the dragon's attacks with a mysterious movement technique that allowed her to strike from multiple angles with incredible speed. From his hiding spot, Jiang Han observed with amazement. That scale armor appears incredibly tough in defense, even harder than Xiantai metal. This Wuho beauty is certainly no ordinary cultivator. The black-armored Emperor Dragon's attack speed was extraordinarily fast and seemingly unavoidable. As the dragon struck with lightning-quick claw attacks, she immediately stepped on a protruding rock, leaping upward to dodge the monster's assault. In a fluid motion, she managed to clash directly with the dragon's eye, causing it to roar in pain as she pierced its head slightly. She jumped away from the dragon's head, but was immediately attacked by its scale-covered tail, which struck her with tremendous force. The impact sent her crashing into the cave wall with a sickening thud. Looking at the dragon with renewed seriousness, Jiang Han wondered how such a creature had awakened after sleeping for so many years. The dragon's power was truly formidable. The dragon took to the air in fury, hovering above the woman and sending crushing waves of energy toward her. She met the attack with confidence, but the dragon's wave ultimately overwhelmed her defenses. She cried out in pain as she was knocked to the ground. Jiang Han watched the battle's progression with growing concern. I need to escape, he decided. That beauty is definitely finished. The strength of the black-armored Emperor Dragon is simply too overwhelming. I can't help even if I wanted to. At that moment, the dragon suddenly received a massive water spike through its head, piercing completely through its skull. This shocked Jiang Han greatly as he wondered how the beautiful Wuho had suddenly become so powerful. Watching the dragon fall with a tremendous crash, the woman stood with renewed confidence, as if she had never been injured at all. Suddenly, she noticed a presence in the shadows. Who's there? Come out immediately, she commanded. Jiang Han was shocked, thinking desperately, this is not good. I've been discovered. There's a 90% chance I'll be killed. The timing couldn't be worse. At that exact moment, the woman suddenly fainted, falling from her elevated position and plunging into the underground lake below. This development both relieved and concerned Jiang Han. Looking at the water, he realized that if she fell into the lake in her unconscious state without anyone to help, she would definitely not survive. However, he also worried about what would happen if she woke up and decided to kill him. Clenching his fist in determination, he he decided to enter the lake to save her. "Who made me so handsome and kind?" he muttered to himself. "I can't just watch such a beautiful woman die." Diving into the cold water, he swam toward her unconscious form. After what felt like an eternity, he finally managed to surface, gasping for breath as he carried her to safety. He placed her on the rocky shore beside the lake, immediately stunned by what he saw. The woman possessed an angelic beauty that left him momentarily speechless, her features perfect even in unconsciousness. Despite the dangerous circumstances, he couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement at her ethereal appearance. He quickly dove back into the water, deciding to hold himself back. The beauty couldn't run away, so he needed to pick up the treasures as soon as possible. Upon meeting the dragon's corpse, he thought about how the body of the black-armored Emperor Dragon was full of treasures, especially the essence, blood, and core, all absolutely invaluable. Swimming faster, he smiled greedily, but was quickly shocked to discover that the 4th-tier peak-level dragon core, worth millions of gold coins, was gone. It had been pierced by a sword. Now he moved to collect the blood, which was what he could still obtain. Opening the body, he saw a large golden dragon heart. He smiled, saying that one couldn't really find many dragons with such a heart. He took it to the surface, wrapped in cloth. The wounded beauty. Rising his head, he looked toward the place where the lady was sleeping. He pulled his shirt off to dry by the fire while the lady remained in pain. Seating himself next to her, he decided to treat her as a reward for killing the black-armored Emperor Dragon. Moving her back to where the injury had occurred, he told her that fortunately she had met him, otherwise such a beautiful back would definitely leave scars. While treating her, she held on to his lap, alerting him. He wondered who could stand such a thing, admitting that he was also a man. She rested on top of his lap, one of her hands holding something. He quickly moved away, wondering if that was the power of Wuho. Hiding behind his cloth, he declared that he was a person with a family and couldn't betray his wife. The dragon heart absorption. Fully resolved, he brought out the heart with a knife, deciding to take this time to do some cultivation. Cutting the heart slightly, it began to glow. Closing his eyes in meditation, he placed the heart forcefully inside himself. He experienced pain like no other, holding his chest and saying it was over. He had absorbed too much energy at once. At that moment, powerful energy swept through his body. As he shouted that it was too much and he couldn't stand it, he screamed as power flowed from the heart inside his body, flowing outward. The awakening. This was the awakening of his bloodline, dragon blood purification. Scale-like patterns and a dragon tail emerged from his body, along with claws on his hands. He was in total pain as wings sprouted from his back. He screamed in pain while fully transforming. Smiling as he looked at his hands, he realized he was now at the 6th-ranked Tongmai realm. He hadn't expected this ancestral vein awakening to have such great benefits. It seemed that he had made a total profit this time. Using his claws to slash at a boulder nearby, he completely destroyed it with one move. So strong, Jiang Han thought to himself. Opening his wings widely, he leaped up into the air, noting how his strength, speed, and defense had all increased several times. With these wings, he could fly even before reaching the Saint Realm. Flying with incredible speed, he looked down at the water, seeing his appearance and wondering if it was going to scare his wife. Without his handsome appearance, how could he attract women in the future? Landing, he decided to return to his human form. Moving the transformation inward, he shouted because the process pained him, wondering if this was what he would go through each time when opening and closing the transformation. Looking at his body, he noted that he was now in the 1st-ranked Tongmai realm. When he transformed into the humanoid dragon form, he leaped by 5 stages in cultivation base. He wondered if the beauty was awake, looking back only to see her standing in front of him. He shouted, asking her when she had awoken, which made her look at him as if he were a pervert. She told him to start rolling and lie on the ground. Looking at her, Jiang Han said that since she had woken up so early, why hadn't she said anything? Wouldn't she want to take advantage of him? He mentioned that he knew she was aware he had a wife, which angered her. He continued, saying that if she really liked him, he would still have to go back and ask his wife if he could make her a concubine. She quickly slapped him, telling him he was thinking about impossible things and should dress up before he talked. She pushed him into the water. Swimming, he shouted at her to fight back properly and not slap his face. She told him that he had looked at her back and she hadn't settled that account yet, asking him if he dared come to her looking for trouble. Swimming out, he said it was also to his disadvantage unless she showed it to him. That would be fair. Kneeling, she pushed his head further into the water, saying that if it weren't for his possession of the primordial ancestral dragon bloodline, based on what he had just said, she would have killed him. While he was underwater, he tried to tell her to let him go. After a while, he put on his clothes, telling her not to peek again because he knew that his abs, biceps, and deltoids were all charming. The lady, on the other hand, decided to endure. The blood of the primordial ancestor dragon was of great use to the Alliance, and she still had to bring this person under the sect. She told him to shut up and asked for his name. Walking out, he smiled, saying he was Jiang Han, and asked about her. With a serious look, she told him he didn't need to know her name, asking if he was willing to join the Bloodblade Alliance and become a member. Repeating what she had said, Jiang Han admitted he hadn't heard of it. She asked if, with his current status, he didn't know where the Bloodblade Alliance was present. She explained that the Bloodblade Alliance was a major organization in the Tianwu continent, with branches throughout the mainland. Their duty was to guard the continent and resist foreign enemies. She continued, explaining that there were peripheral members recruited from outside the Alliance who only needed to receive tasks issued by the Bloodblade Alliance to perform missions and obtain contribution points. There were also inner members who were loyal to the Bloodblade Alliance for life. Both had common level standards. The higher the level, the more resources could be obtained. Jiang Han thought about what she had said, realizing they must be a powerful organization. Now that he had so many enemies, backing was urgently needed. He told her he would like to join, but since he liked freedom, he wouldn't be joining as an inner disciple. He asked about their outside rules. Looking at her, she asked if he thought it was easy to enter the inner organization. She said the Bloodblade Alliance never restricted the freedom of peripheral members. Since he had agreed to join, she would grant him the Black Iron badge. Black Iron, he said as he caught the badge, asking if it wasn't the lowest level. Looking away, she told him she was an inner disciple with Red Bronze rank. Jiang Han thought that a grade 1 Wuhou was only Red Bronze grade. How strong were the people in the last 4 levels? Getting up, she told him that now he knew how precious his identity as a Black Iron member was. Even great masters had to weigh their options when they saw his identity as Black Iron. With a thumbs up, he quickly accepted the Black Iron badge. With seriousness, she told him that many cities in the Tianwu Empire had branches of the Bloodblade Alliance. She instructed him to go to one of those branches to register so he could officially become a member of the Bloodblade Alliance, telling him she hoped he would do it himself before disappearing. This surprised him, she was so fast. Looking at the badge, he thought that this time he had made a good harvest, but the corpse of the black-armored Emperor Dragon couldn't be moved and could only remain here. After a while, he stepped out of the cave, but the bear was at one corner waiting for him. It roared, meaning, "Boy, you finally came out." Jiang Han quickly transformed into his dragon form, his imposing presence frightening the monster before him. After tapping the creature's head, he commanded the bear to guard the entrance and prevent any primitive beasts or humans from entering, warning that failure to comply would result in death. The bear nodded in understanding, and as Jiang Han departed and returned to his human form, the loyal guardian waved farewell. Over the following days, Jiang Han searched the mountains for soul medicine while practicing a technique called Shadow Step. During his journey, he encountered Yuan beasts ranging between Tier 2 and Tier 3, taking the initiative to engage them in combat to temper his 9 layers of Return to Yuan sword technique. On the 4th day, he finally claimed victory over a ring-patterned celestial python, winning the coveted Inyang Tian Yuan flower. After absorbing the spirit core of the defeated python, he successfully broke through to the 2nd-ranking channel state. As he carefully placed the precious herbs in his bag, he reflected on his good fortune and looked forward to returning home to refine the pill that could suppress his soul's injuries. The prospect of healing his soul once again filled him with happiness. Among all cultivators, soul masters who focused on cultivating their souls were the rarest. Their primary method of battle relied on soul-based attacks, and their offensive capabilities were nearly impossible to defend against. Some powerful soul masters could even control people's minds, causing victims to experience vivid hallucinations. Jiang Han smiled as he thought about his father-in-law, knowing that despite being the lord of a city, the man didn't understand these methods. This knowledge gap represented another potential danger to the city, and Jiang Han realized it was time to return home. While making his way back through the forest, he overheard a group of people discussing his whereabouts. One wondered aloud whether Jiang Han had truly died in the inner forest, while another declared that the 9 masters were insane. If Jiang Han was alive, they needed to retrieve his corpse. The speaker dismissed the possibility, claiming that someone like Jiang Han couldn't find a good place to die and surely wouldn't dare venture into the inner forest. Hidden from view, Jiang Han listened as the group of bandits continued their crude conversation. They speculated that if Jiang Han had indeed died, his wife would become a widow, left lonely and vulnerable. One bandit lewdly suggested that he would be willing to lose 10 years of his life for the chance to be intimate with Ryu Zio, Jiang Han's wife. Another bandit laughed mockingly, claiming he was afraid his life expectancy would be lost in less than 10 years, crudely remarking that her legs could pinch people to death. This vulgar comment ignited Jiang Han's fury, causing him to emerge from his hiding place. The bandits all wondered who this newcomer was as Jiang Han appeared with a smirk on his face, his aura swirling around him as he asked if they wanted to see what lay beneath the mountains. One of the bandits laughed and called out to his brothers that a great reward had come to them. The bald one urged caution, warning they should be wary of fraud. He dismissed Jiang Han as just a kid who must have prepared some trick. However, the bearded bandit dismissed this suggestion, arguing that as long as their opponent wasn't a 9th-grade gathering master, they had nothing to fear. He pointed out that Brother Scar was an 8th-rank cultivator, and with so many people present, there was no reason for concern. Still smiling, Jiang Han asked how many of them had come. One bandit with a scar questioned why they should tell him, noting that he was surrounded yet still pretending to be powerful. The scarred bandit boasted that he was a 9th-rank Qi gathering cultivator about to catch up to the great masters, then moved toward Jiang Han with serious intent. Jiang Han declared coldly that there was no way he would let any of them leave alive today. Before the scarred bandit could react or speak, Jiang Han sliced through him with lightning speed. The man's only thought before death was how impossibly fast Jiang Han had moved. As blood splashed and flowed like rain, Jiang Han announced to the others that he would cut them down into 3 parts. The remaining bandits stared in shock, unable to comprehend what they had witnessed. One quickly tried to alert the others, exclaiming that even a 9th-rank cultivator couldn't move that fast. Their opponent must possess channeling state power. He frantically attempted to send a signal for reinforcements, but before he could act, he saw Jiang Han approaching. Though his eyes could track the movement, his body couldn't react in time. Jiang Han asked mockingly if they thought they had any chance before slicing through all of them, leaving only one survivor. The last bandit fell to the ground in shock, crying and begging not to be killed. In his terror, he revealed that the 9 masters had sent a total of 100 people, divided into 10 teams to encircle Jiang Han. Bending down to pick up the signal device, Jiang Han told the trembling bandit that he wouldn't be needing it before slicing him down to join the others. With blood splattered across his face, Jiang Han activated the device and declared with deadly intent that the hunt had begun. As all the other bandit teams saw the signal fireworks lighting up the sky, one of them alerted his companions that it seemed they had found Jiang Han. They all ran toward the signal, laughing as they declared that his death was coming. One bandit even mocked that a group of idiots couldn't defeat Jiang Han, but he was immediately sliced down before he could finish speaking. It was Jiang Han who countered him as his second kill of the night. That night became the night when the hunters became the prey, and Black Rock Mountain was drenched in blood. Holding a small book to tally his kills, Jiang Han perched on a tree branch and noted that there were 10 more to go, wondering where they were hiding. He jumped down, leaving behind the corpses of bandits scattered both in the trees and on the forest floor. The scene shifted to one surviving bandit who ran into a camp, alerting everyone he could find that 9 teams had been completely destroyed. One of the remaining bandits told him not to be afraid, explaining that their team was different, they had the best killer among them. He revealed that one of the 9 masters was coming after successfully ambushing Ryu Zio. The other bandits grew excited, saying that if they could capture her, they would be richly blessed. However, his fate was sealed as he was suddenly struck down, shocking the others. Jiang Han appeared and asked them coldly about their claim of ambushing his wife, demanding to know what the situation was. They were all on high alert as Jiang Han stood confidently before them. One bandit sneered and told him to ask his wife after he went down to the underworld. The bandit immediately swallowed a pill, and upon consuming it, his strength and speed dramatically increased. As Jiang Han attacked, he noticed it was a violent enhancement pill. The bandit laughed, saying that just because Jiang Han wanted to kill him didn't mean he could dream on. They clashed with full force, and the enhanced bandit managed to send Jiang Han to the ground. However, Jiang Han quickly recovered and began continuously striking the bandit, demanding to know where his wife was and who dared to ambush her. The bandit, now beaten and broken, smirked as he revealed that as soon as Ryuzaya heard they were targeting Jiang Han, she had fled the city with 10 people. He laughed cruelly, saying it was a pity she had become a waste in the end. Smashing the bandit's head against the ground, Jiang Han told him that even if he didn't reveal her location, he would find out anyway. Standing over the corpses, he declared that they had dared to use him as a means to target his wife. Looking at the blood of the bandits pooled on the forest floor, he stated that they had completely enraged him. Meanwhile, Ryuzaya's troops lay dead on the ground around her. She was injured and pressed against a wall as someone approached her, telling her that resistance was useless. He simply wanted to invite her to come to his house. She asked defiantly whether Jiang Han was also at his house, questioning if he was in collusion with the Zhang Jiaishan bandits and why he was being so impatient. The man repeated her words about collusion mockingly, saying she was joking. He revealed that Haifeng's was actually the property of the Zhang family. The man identified himself as Zhang Dong, a 4th-grade Dao vein cultivator. He commanded his men to attack, saying he had waited long enough. He crudely suggested that if they took down Ryu Zayu, his big brothers could try their marksmanship with her tonight. Ryu Zayu prepared to defend herself as she called out to Jiang Han, swearing that she would bring him back to her side.